So with real estate, everybody is always wondering, what's going on. Pretty much everywhere I go, we do the chit chat and say that. And eventually they get to like, how's the market? That's like the number one question of any, cocktail gathering or place they get around to, and they're like, how's the market? So let's advance to the next slide. So right now, the biggest question that I'm getting asked is there a coming real estate bubble? That's like if you look online and type in that, the number of searches are like on the rise. Like people are starting to wonder, how many of you guys that thought has crossed your mind? Like, we've been hot and heavy for so long, are we actually in a bubble? You're not alone. So a lot of people are wondering what's going on. It's certainly a hot topic. It serves as great clickbait. So that title, if you just want somebody to click on your stuff, just put that title up there. People are going to like, oh yeah, I want to know what that is. At least they'll click into your article. But really, you want to know, is it true or not? And that's the biggest question, is it true? So let's look at the facts. So the facts actually look like this. There's 4 areas that I want to cover today that help us to understand what are the facts behind the case. The first one is inventory. Inventory has been low and it's going to continue to stay low because if you look, I don't know if you've noticed, there's really nowhere else to build around here. And real estate's local, by the way, so I'm not trying to speak on a national level, although the national numbers are very much similar. Everywhere I talk to agents, they're experiencing the same thing, low inventory. So if you have anybody that's out of state, a family member that's looking, they're all in multiple offers, same kind of environment that we're in. But the current new listings are at 2,179 homes in Orange County, which is the lowest level since tracking began in 2004. That's the facts. So we don't have hardly any homes for sale. All right. So for comparison, last October there were 4,153. So it's like half of what it was even last year. And even in the pandemic, when there was like 2.5, 3 months where everything just shut down, they still had double the number. So we're experiencing like tremendously low inventory. So that's one factor, and that's not going to change. The second thing is demand, and that's measured by the pending sales over the last couple of weeks. So obviously inventory and demand are going to go hand in hand. That's just natural. Whatever is available can be sold. So demand, though, is up and measured by that pending. It's 16.3% year-to-date up from last year over the same time in 2020. The third thing that we look at is how fast are things selling. The speed of the market is one thing that we're always looking at. And I've told you guys in times past, like at the different price points, how fast those different price points are selling. And on average, homes priced under 1.5, and I choke when I say that because some of my colleagues across the United States are like, yeah, mine's 300,000 is our average in the marketplace. Around here, to have a $1.5 million house is not that difficult to kind of put your mind around. But $1.5 million houses are selling in 22 days. 22 days. That's so fast. Usually a $1.5 million house in times past would be 8 months would be regular. And by the way, they measure the market in terms of how fast things are going in relation to 6 months. So anything above 6 months, if it takes longer than that, that's considered a buyer's market. So what do you think when you look at 22 days, what do you think that is?
Seller's market.
It's not only a seller's market, but it is a ridiculously hot seller's market.
Yeah.
So if you're a seller, you're not only going to sell it, but you're going to get multiple offers. Things are selling for much higher than what it was. Last year was still pretty fast, 43 days, and you see fast and furious. I looked around to get that. All right. The fourth thing that we look at is the average home sale price. We want to know how are things going in the home pricing. So year-to-date numbers show an increase over last year of 21.1%. That's pretty high. Normally it's like 5, 6%, on average when you look over the history of real estate. A 5% rise is normal. But 21.1% is red hot, and it's flying up. All right, let's look at the next slide. So really, we want to know, what do we do from here? Okay? So for the remainder of this year, and the next slide we'll talk about next year, for the remainder of this year, we're heading into the fall market. Have you guys noticed it's a little chillier this morning? The sun's not exactly up when you started your way over here. Well, we're heading into the fall market. We accept the inventory is going to drop even more. So because of the cycle of the year, normally around this time, inventory peaks, demand peaks, usually in July, August. That's when things of the year, that's a normal flow. Things come out and start going up in the spring market. Then we get to the summer, and then we peak, and then just an ebb and flow of the year. This is normal for this time of the year, but we're already so low in the inventory that to think that we're going to drop in inventory even more, for the buyers that are out there, like, I'm going to have even less choice. So anyway, that's what's happening though. Interest rates ticked up just a little bit. John's been keeping you apprised on that. I did talk to him and reached out with 20% down, 2.875, which is up an 8 over a couple weeks before. And it ranges based on credit and a couple of other things, but generally speaking, 2.875, is that a good rate or not?
Yes.
Good rate.
Horrible.
It's a horrible rate. In comparison to where the low was at 2.5, let me just tell you that that's not really going to go, it's not going to go much higher than that. It's going to go up and down and stuff like that, but low interest rate environment is still around, and it's going to be around. The demand is going to fall as the inventory falls. And then also think about this, is that the time of the year that we're in, people start turning their eyes towards like Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. They kind of put the kids are in school now, so people usually just as a normal ebb and flow of the year, this time of the year things start like cooling off anyway, just the way that it happens. So remember that demand is defined as new escrows over the last couple of weeks, so that's how they measure that. Number 4, the expected market time is going to take slightly longer, so instead of 22 days, it might take 25. Anyway, we're going to stay in a seller's market. That's the bottom line for this year. Let's jump into the next one and see what's going to happen next year. So for the next year, where we go from here in 2022, our biggest hot button, have you guys heard about this? Inflation? Have you guys heard about this?
Yeah.
All right, inflation's here, and it's here to stay for a while. And some people might even argue, the latest numbers, when I did the slide the first time, I had 5.3, but then the numbers came out, and so I had to raise it to 5.4. Some would argue that it's much higher than that. Why is that happening? Number 1, we have a decline of the value of the dollar. And we also have the increase in the money supply. They've been printing money to pay for all these things. And then the last thing is you may have noticed a few ships off the coast.
Yes.
My shirts are waiting in those because Kathy's got like five shirts for me. But we're having supply chain issues, not just in domestic product type stuff, but for housing. So all the things that require, it's getting more expensive. They're not getting the raw materials to build. So recently I helped Bo's cousin out in buying. We started off wanting to buy a new home, but because they were building them at such a slow pace, her time didn't come up until later on. And by the time that it came up 6 months later, the prices were dramatically higher than when she started looking. So we ended up buying a pre-owned home and was able to get a better price on that. So supply chain issues are part of this. So inflation is going to remain, low inventory is going to persist. The lower interest rates, they're still going to be around. They're going to bounce around. But if you think about this, the overnight rate and stuff, that's where the federal government has to pay on their own debt. Do they want the interest rates to go up significantly? No. So some might argue with me as to how high these interest rates will go, but they can't, in my personal opinion, they can't go too high because they're paying their own debt on that. So I think we're still going to have lower interest rates in general persisting. And then the demand for housing, if you think about this, rentals, are we getting less people coming into the United States or more people coming in?
More.
Are the millennials coming out of the basements and getting into housing? Yes. So we're seeing a strong demand from millennials, and we also have the immigration that's happening. They have to live somewhere, whether they're renting or whether they're owning or whether Section 8 housing or anything. The need for housing is not going down. So we're going to have a tremendous demand for housing. Next one. Couple of things. Is inflation bad for housing? Not at all, unfortunately. While it's bad for purchasing power, this bodes well for hard assets and stocks. Jeff will tell you, he's nodding his head. Hard assets is where you want to be, okay? The economists agree. There's an article that just came out a few days ago from Goldman Sachs economists, led by Jen Halstein, saying home prices will grow a further 16% by the end of 2022. That's another big jump up, well above the averages. Then he went on to say, of all the shortages afflicting the U.S. economy, the housing shortage might be the longest. So there's no end in sight. That's why you keep hearing people talk about adding on ADUs, additional dwelling units at their house. They're converting their garages into space. They're building a little unit for mom in the back of the yard. Things like that. They're trying to figure out ways. That's one of the reasons Prop 19 came out, so that they can loosen up the inventory, so that people moving around, seniors now have opportunity to go 3 times taking their tax base, so they can be able to continue doing that. Next slide. Further on, there's a survey. More than a third of the economists say inflation is going to be more significant than expected this year. And that chief economist Lawrence Yun, he's the National Association of Realtor guy. He's their chief one. He said 4 days ago that inflation to be more significant than expected and rents will accelerate. So if you think about it as an investor, you know, when rents accelerate, what happens to the property values in investment properties? Jen, they go up because it's all tied to how much the cash flow is. So when they look at that, you're going to see, you know, multi-unit, those things are going to go up. So my friends, if you know anybody that's renting right now, they really need to take a look at what it would take to buy. It may not be the case, but they need to get in a position. If they can buy right now is the best time to buy. Not only are we in this type of fall month where you have other people that are just like, I'm just going to come back in the spring. Buyers, right now is the best time for them to be able to jump on anything. Plus, their rents where they're at, if they're not living at home, their rents are going to go up. Okay? So the lowest price right now in Huntington Beach, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, 1,250 square feet is $870,000. So $870,000. If the 16% inflation rate's right, that same house next year is going to be $1.9 million. So $1,009,200. So next slide. So the bottom line is that you need to refer all your friends and family to my
Even your enemies.
all your enemies. So I teased you last week thinking that you're going to have bad news for housing. Bad news is not in the cards for real estate. So, you know, please consider anyone that you know that's renting right now. They really do need to take a look and get into their own. They're either building their own dream or they're building my dream when I have an investment property. So, thank you very much for your time. Any questions?